You mentioned a number of human rights abuses that are occurring in Burma. And my question is, under the current government or the government that's to be elected in the upcoming election, short of a regime change that would overcome the military dictatorship, are there other mechanisms in the meantime by which the government can be held accountable for those human rights abuses, in your opinion? So while the struggle for democracy is continuing, are there other ways to curb the human rights abuses, hold the government accountable, and maybe deter the government from engaging in those very severe abuses?
I wanted to say no, but I don't want to make you hopeless. Why I wanted to say no is because, I mean, this is the situation that has been going on for 6 decades. And we've been talking about it all over. So you might expect that people hear it and they're interested and they wanted to make a difference and they wanted to bring this regime to the table, to hold them accountable. And therefore, we've been lobbying so hard, we've been advocating for the Commission of Inquiry into war crimes and crimes against humanity. And as of now, we have only 13 countries. I mean, not that I'm hopeless, but I think it'll take us a while to get to a certain point. So I think as of now, what we can do is just keep pushing the government, I mean the international community as well as the US. So with that, I wanted to remind all of you, I have some information at the back. I hope you can take a look at them and pick them up. And also, I'd like to urge you to please sign up on our so that I can add you on our listserv and then send you the information, because coming in November after the election, with the US Campaign for Burma, we're going to kind of like start pushing in for a House resolution in order to get the US government support. Because here, back in August, early September, President Obama and the US government is already making it public that they're supporting the Commission of Inquiry. But there's no action taken yet. So we have to, making this, agreeing and having this promise, but also we have to put this into action so that this promise can be effective. So I'm telling you, we're going to need your help, and I really urge you to please sign up.
Does anyone else want to?
As for me, after the elections, the government may want to have the impression in the international community that we are elected government, we are responsible government, we are constitutional government. Then they will try to, restrain, at least they will try as much as they can to restrain the human rights abuse, I think, to be optimistic. And another thing is, if they think there is no direct challenge to the authority of the military, because there will be some elected members in the government, 1 or 2 maybe, but that may also have a, impact the degree of human rights abuse. Not much, I think. That's my expectation.
Does Gawsita? Okay.
Yes.
No. He said, yeah. He said it's enough. Yeah.
It may not be possible, it probably is not possible for you, Myra, to answer this question in this setting. But when you said that you spent 10 years as an internally displaced person, it blew my mind. And I'm wondering, how do people live for so long, essentially running around in the jungle? How do they survive? If you can describe that briefly. You could probably write a very long book about it, but if you could just summarize, how do people survive? And also, I presume it's still going on now, and what is going on now in that context?
Many of you who was born in America and has never fled for lives, you have the idea like, what is going on? Why you have your country, and why you have to be internally displaced in your own country? Well, interesting, huh? But I'm telling you, this is Burma, this is not the United States. So, yes, 10 years, but thank God, I was born and then up to I was 10 years old. It's still different from if I were there at this age. Because the suffering, the feeling will be different, but because I was a child, so I didn't really get to see that suffering so much. So, how did that happen? Of course, we had to flee for lives, as I described earlier. But how did we survive? It's a very interesting thing, and I'm always impressed by the people who are left behind these days. Guess what? They don't have homes. They have to sleep one night here, one night there, but they don't give up. You tell them, okay, your life is hard. I talked to some of my distant relatives. I was like, life is so hard in the internally displaced area. Why don't you leave and come to the refugee camp? They were like, no, our home. We don't want to go away from it. We would rather die here. So how do they survive? Well, they are pretty wise, although they don't read any ABCD. They have their food. Let's say they work on their farm, and then they collect the food by the end of the year, and then they hide it at a place where they figure the military regime, the military troops has no clue where this place is. And they keep it really safe. But also on top of that, they don't keep it close by where the village is, because when the village is destroyed and then the landmines are planted, they won't be able to come back. So they keep the food somewhere else. And then also when they set up their villages, they don't kind of like set it up for a long term. They just build up a little shed with the bamboos and then leaves, roof. And then they live there so that even if this home is destroyed, this house is destroyed, but it doesn't take away so much of my energy, because if I have to build it up another time, yes, I can build it up again. So, and also, it's not only men. Nowadays, women become the village leader, because usually when the troops came into the village, they would look for men and then send them to the front line to become minesweepers, porter, to carry heavy ammunitions and all this stuff. So now the women become the head man of the villages. And then I guess sometimes yes, the military regimes are very tough to the ethnic people, but also at the same time, when it comes to women, it's kind of like a little tricky for them to play the game with women. They just cannot take them straight out and then do whatever they wanted to do with them as the way they would have done to men. So it's a kind of like they have their own little unique way of not wanting to give up. So they would do whatever it takes for them to be able to survive in jungle. Do I answer your question? Yeah. Okay.
Hi. I'm from the region, but I have no expertise at all in Burma. But I'm just looking at the title of this talk, Democracy in Burma. And I'm just wondering whether is there any symbolic political significance in calling it Burma and not Myanmar? That it is. So why not call it democracy in Myanmar? So in using Burma as opposed to Myanmar, I'm just wondering, is there any political activism just in choosing the name by which you call the country?
Well, the very easiest way is that the regime changed the name of the country name Burma to Myanmar without anyone's consent. So it's almost like I changed my name without letting anybody know, but I'm telling you, I used to change my name, I used to add on my name, legalize my name in the US, but I had to go through 2 months process. A personal name, but here a country name that holds 5 million? 50 million. Yeah, 50 million people. But they changed the country name overnight without, nobody knows. So that is the very easy way to understand it.
Yes, actually, frankly speaking, Myanmar makes more sense than Burma. Burma is actually Burmans, and Burma is a Burma proper, the major ethnic group. And 30% of the ethnic peoples have the Karen, Shan, Mon, Rakhine, Chin. So altogether, Myanmar, it does make more sense. But the problem is the messenger, not the message. Because of the military government, not in the name, it is the problems, the messengers rather than message. That's what
Think of it, I think you can think of it the way you think of a corporation that has, let's say, become a major polluter or had some huge scandal, and they change the corporation name and hope that people will not know that this is still the same corporation. Gawsita want to say something? Burma, Myanmar?
Burma ne Myanmar ne ပြောင်းလိုက်တာကဦးဇင်းတို့နိုင်ငံလွတ်လပ်ရေးရပြီးတဲ့နောက်ပိုင်းမှာဘာမှဆိုလဲနာမည်နဲ့သုံးလာတာပေါ့နော်အခုဒီနာအဖလက်ထက်ရောက်တဲ့အခါကျတော့ဘာမှဆိုတဲ့နာမည်ကိုမြန်မာဆိုတဲ့နာမည်နဲ့ယူရမှာသုံးလိုက်တယ်ဒါရင်လားဆိုတော့နာအဖဒါတွေမကဘူးပေါ့ဟိုဦးဇင်းတို့နိုင်ငံမှာလွတ်လပ်ရေးရခဲ့တဲ့အချိန်ကလေးကရှိခဲ့တဲ့နာမည်တွေရှိတယ်ဟိုလွတ်လပ်ရေးမှာဆိုဘုန်းကြီးတွေကဆိုဥဒ္ဓမာတို့တိုက်ခဲ့တဲ့ဥဒ္ဓမာလမ်းတို့ဥဒ္ဓမာပန်းချံတို့ဒါတွေဆိုလို့ချင်းဒီလမ်းတွေပန်းချံတွေကိုနာအဖဒုက္ခမှာဘာလုပ်လိုက်လဲဆိုတော့အရင်တော့နာမည်တွေကိုပြောင်းထုတ်လိုက်တယ်ဟိုအခြားနာမည်တွေပြောင်းလိုက်တယ်ဒါနာအဖလက်ထက်မှာအကုန်လုံးအစားထိုးပြီးတော့သမိုင်းကိုဖျောက်ပြက်ပြီးတော့မှချိန်လိုက်တာပါလို့
For the name change, Burma was used as Burma under the British colony. However, after this regime, they changed into Myanmar, and UN is using it. And also another point is after the independence from British, NAAPA, which is the SPDC government, the current government, they changed all those names who are significant in the independence era, like Odama, who is the activist monk who revolt against the colony. Those names is changed by the regime into other names. So this, in that context, they change into Myanmar as well.
I don't have a mic, but let me make a comment. George Orwell lived in Burma, and the concepts that you know from 1984, Big Brother, and what was it called? Something Speak, New Speak. That's what has happened in Burma. So, in a nutshell, that's what it's about.
Thank you. I wanted to ask a question. Given the strength of religious feeling, both among Buddhist and Christian populations in Burma, why do you think the religious groups and the churches have been able to do so little? Why did the Saffron Revolution fail? I wonder if people could say a little more about that. And a related question, for many of us, here in the West, we really don't understand how a regime with such a small support base and with such strong support for Aung San Suu Kyi and for her party, it seems to us from the outside, can survive for so long. I wonder if some of the commentators could address these questions for us. Thank you.
I think I'll take the second part. Probably the last part, I'll leave it for you. Okay. The second part, why we're so many and we're supporting Aung San Suu Kyi and we can't get anywhere. Hey, I'm asking you, seriously, how much power do you have? Do you think you might be as strong as Chinese government? No. So, no matter what we're doing, remember back in 2007, the resolution, it was put on the UN Security Council table. And the China and the Russia just vetoed it. And then that's it. So we're talking about here, the regime itself, it seems to be small, and they probably don't have very strong people to support them, or not too many people to support them, but they have strong people, those who hold on to the power that we don't have. So, yeah, that is very hard to compare.
control လုပ်ထားတယ်ဆိုတော့သူ့အာဏာတစ်ခုတည်းနဲ့ပညာရေးမှာဆိုရင်လည်းပဲသူ့ရဲ့အာဏာနဲ့တုံးလိုက်တာနဲ့ရတယ်အဲ့တော့အခုဦးဇင်းတို့2007တုန်းကဖြစ်ခဲ့တယ်ဆိုတာလည်းပဲတန်ဃာတွေကနေပြီးတော့ငြိမ်းငြိမ်းချမ်းချမ်းနဲ့ဖြစ်ခဲ့တယ်နာအဖကဘာဖြစ်လို့ဖြိုခွဲလိုက်လဲဆိုတော့နာအဖမှာကဘာသာဆိုတာသူ့မှာမရှိဘူးသူကမရှိတဲ့အခါကျတော့သူယုံကြည်မှုမရှိဘူးယုံကြည်မှုမရှိတဲ့အခါကျတော့သူကတော့သူ့ရဲ့အာဏာပါဝါကိုလာထိပါလာရင်တော့ဘယ်လိုလူမှမခံဘူးသူ့ရဲ့တပည့်လည်းမခံဘူးသူ့ရဲ့သားသမီးလည်းမခံဘူးအကုန်လုံးတတ်တာပဲအဲ့တော့သူ့ရဲ့အာဏာပါဝါကိုထိပါလာတဲ့အတွက်ကြောင့်နာအဖကလူမဆန်တဲ့လုပ်ရက်တွေကြောင့်လုပ်လို့ဘာသာရေးဖွဲ့စည်းတွေကလည်းပဲသူတို့နဲ့စန့်ကျင်ပြီးတော့မလုပ်ရတဲ့အဖြစ်မျိုးကိုဖြစ်နေခဲ့ရတာပါအဲ့ဒါကြောင့်ဦးဇင်းတို့ဒီစတင်မှာအရေးခင်မှာကြာဆုံးခဲ့တာပေါ့နော်
why the Saffron Revolution failed even though Burma is strong in the as a Buddhist country because in 2007 all these monks were protesting very peacefully and the government cracked down very harsh on them because the regime has no religion. They don't believe in any religion and they will kill anyone who will threaten their power. They will even kill their sister, brother or mother and they will do any inhumane activities just to hold on the power. So that even though we are strong as Buddhist a religious leader, we cannot compete with them because they will do whatever to hold their power. So that's why we fail.
I just wanted to ask a question that maybe Gawsita and Josanta and Professor Scott might answer. Is it connected with the previous question? When we look at Saffron Revolution, and the Buddhist monks use the Buddhist symbols, rituals like Patat Nuku Zanakama, and then you also use prayer of loving kindness. All this Buddhist symbolism are very powerful. But when Josanta said our social structure in Burma was like more hierarchical pyramid rather than horizontally diverse. But when we look at Saffron Revolution movement, we have a lot of ethnic areas, and Christianity is like second largest religion in Burma. And the thing was that for me as a Christian, sometimes it's hard to completely immersed into this Buddhist symbolism. And I started learning only loving kindness prayer when Saffron Revolution started. I wasn't quite used to it. But when it comes to this movement, how could the Buddhist monks use more inclusive symbolism, symbolism that can persuade other ethnic groups into your movement? And Professor Scott writes a little bit about this Christianity as a source of distance from the lowland people. And I'm just wondering how we could get an inclusive approach. That maybe Gawsita might have an idea from the Buddhist perspective. Thank you very much.
Now the cheka aku pada niku sana kan saune sura ka le be uzinu ye sorry uzinu ye Buddha bada aya bada iya di na pha ka sit ta ni hlu de usa ko uzinu ka lat ma khan do bu turu jin phyeot lai de turu ko ati ma pyu bu so de ha myu ne ai da ka do uzinu bada iya ba pa win nai me so yin do along pa win nai ma de naw tat chat le be di aku phit lai de khat ke ka uzinu di Burma lu myo de tayauk the phit da mo Myanmar nainga ma shi de tayin da baung song mo no along achat de ri khat ke ri phit ni ja de ai atwat di pye le pho ai da ko uzinuအနေနဲ့ကဒီအာဏာပါဝါကိုယူဖို့အတွက်မဟုတ်ဘူးနောက်အဖအနေနဲ့ကိုနိုင်ငံမှာဖြစ်ပြနေတာကိုတိုင်းရင်းသားတွေနဲ့ဒေါအောင်ဆန်းစုကြည်နဲ့တွေ့ဆုံဆွေးနွေးအပြေချပါဆိုတဲ့ဟာကိုဦးဇင်းတို့ကတင်ပြတာပါနောက်အဖကိုပြောပြတာပါလို့အာဏာပါဝါကိုလိုချင်လို့ဦးဇင်းတို့ကယူတာမဟုတ်ပါဘူး
Chanting Metta Sutta is not it's for everyone for the universe for the peace of the universe and we pray for the people. It's all inclusive. It's not just for the white people or not for the black people or it's all for the humanity. And also the boycott Patani Kunisana, which is the boycott, religious boycott that we did impose on the SPDC is because of it's showing that we don't accept anything from the regime, and we are just doing as a religious boycott to them. And what is happening in Burma is not only happening to the Burmans; it is also happening to the ethnic minorities. So what we do as monks in 2007 revolution is not to get any powers. We urge the government to start a national reconciliation process with Aung San Suu Kyi and other ethnic minorities. So this is what we do. And also in this movement, everybody can participate.
And as far as I understand, all the religions differentiate goods and bads, evils. So love or loving kindness is, all religions teach love and loving, to have loving kindness towards each other, to any people. So it is not very different, but very difficult to follow by other religions I think, the ethnic people in Burma. It is very much equivalent to the non-violence and non-passive resistance led by Mahatma Gandhi in India. This is something like that. Every religion can understand easily. I think the loving kindness, the reciting the Metta Sutra is the same. And Pata Nikosna Kansang, that means they are not receiving any alms donations from the military government. That is the same as the excommunication by the Christian church. Buddhist monks are trying to excommunicate the regime because they are Buddhist, majority of them are. That's a very similar, I think, with other religions. Thank you.
Oh, I don't have much to add. I suppose it's on the question of how is it possible for a regime with so little popular support to nonetheless persist. It's worth pointing out that in 1990 they actually won the election, and for a change they counted the votes, and then the parliament was simply not seated. This was a large democratic movement of major proportions. And when Aung San Suu Kyi was released, I think it's, the Dahgayphaw massacre was when? What year?
2003.
2003. When she went from town to town to see her supporters, the number of people grew and grew and grew and grew, and it was quite clear that this was also a revolution in the making. And then the regime essentially blocked her motorcade and killed we don't know how many people. So that was, if you like, a growing people's revolution that was crushed, and so was the Saffron Revolution. And what's interesting to me is that it leads to a question to Gawsita, that if you have 1,000 or 2,000 troops who are willing to shoot monks, you can put down the Saffron Revolution. And the question is, which military units were willing to do that? One imagines that they couldn't have been just any soldiers. They had to be specially trained units. Perhaps he could respond to that.
Light Infantry Division.
Those soldiers who shoot were the monks are from the LID, Light Infantry Division, 77.
77.
Yeah. When I spoke to them at the Shwedagon Pagoda during the Saffron Revolution, when we negotiate with them, they didn't listen to us. And also when I asked to take off their shoes, because when you enter the pagoda, you have to take off your shoes. When I asked them, they didn't hear me. However, when I poked them and to tell them, but at the time they kind of responsive, and I think that those soldiers were drugged by the regime, and they were not normal, and they will do. It seems like they will do whatever the regime ordered. So that is the situation.
Thank you, everyone, for coming today. I had two questions. One is, there's a lot of talk now in Burma about the growing civil society, and there's more NGOs and more CBOs. And at the same time, there's been a pretty big crackdown on religious institutions in Burma since the Saffron Revolution. So I was wondering if Gawsita could speak a little bit about what's happened to the Sangha since it faded from international attention. And the second thing that I'm curious about for Gawsita and for Myra is how your own faith fuels your activism in doing this, because I feel like that's a uniting factor, that people of different religions in Burma are resisting the military regime, even if they may be of different faiths. So if you could speak a little about that personally.
NGO တွေများလာတယ်ဆိုတာက NGO တွေက အထဲထဲမှာသွားလုပ်ချင်တယ်ဆိုတဲ့ဟာမျိုးဖြစ်လာတယ်။ဖြစ်လာတယ်ဆိုတာကလည်းအခု 2010 အတွက်ကိုနာအဖဟာပေးထားတယ်။နာအဖဟာပေးထားပြီးတော့နာအဖဘာလုပ်လဲဆိုတော့ဒီ NGO တွေလာလို့ရှိရင်သူ့ရဲ့လက်အောက်ကပဲသွားရမယ်။ဦးဇင်းတို့တည်ထားတယ်ဆိုတာ NGO ဆိုတာလွတ်လွတ်လပ်လပ်ကိုယ့်ဘာသာကိုဟိုတရားဥပဒေပေါင်းတွင်းနဲ့လုပ်လို့ရတယ်။ဒါပေမဲ့နာအဖကဘာပဲလုပ်လို့သူ့ရှီကနေပြီးတော့သွားရမယ်။ဆိုရပါဆို2008တုန်းကဦးဇင်းတို့နိုင်ငံမှာဟိုနာဂစ်ဖြစ်ခဲ့တယ်။နိုင်ငံတကာရဲ့အဖွဲ့အစည်းတွေကငွေလှူတယ်။ငွေလှူတဲ့အခါမှာနိုင်ငံတကာကလူတွေကနေပြီးတော့အဲဒုက္ခသည်တွေကိုချီကိုတက်ရိုက်သွားလှူခြင်း။ဒါပေမဲ့နာအဖကလက်မခံဘူး။သူ့ရှီကနေပြီးတော့မှသွား။သူ့ရှီကနေပြီးတော့မှသွားရောမှသူလှူပေးမယ်။မင်းတို့မလှူပဲမင်းတို့ကနိုင်ငံတကာလှူမဲ့ပတ်စံနာအဖပဲလှူနာအဖလှူမယ်ဆိုတဲ့ဟာမျိုးကန့်တတ်တာတယ်။အခုလည်းပဲဒီလိုကန့်တတ်မှုမျိုးနဲ့သူကလုံနေတယ်။လုံနေတဲ့အခါမှာနာဘာတစ်ဖက်လက်ကနေပြီးတော့အခုဘာလုပ်လဲဆိုတော့နိုင်ငံတကာရဲ့ NGO တွေကိုသူ့ပြည်တွင်းမှာလုပ်လို့ရပါပြီဆိုပြီးတော့သူကဒီလိုဖွင့်ပေးထားတာပါဒါကြောင့်ဟို NGO တွေထဲထဲသွားလုပ်မယ်ပါညာဆိုပြီးတော့ဖြစ်လာတာအကယ်၍ဒါသွားလုပ်ခဲ့လို့ရှိရင်တော့ NGO တွေအနေနဲ့ကဟိုဘယ်လိုပြောမလဲအခက်အခဲတွေအများကြီးနဲ့ရင်ဆိုင်ကြုံတွေ့ပြီးတော့မှပြန်ရောက်လာမယ့်အဆင့်ကိုဦးဇင်းတို့မြင်ပါတယ်
Yes, there are more and more NGOs in Burma. However, they have to follow the regime's instructions and orders, and they cannot operate freely. For example, in 2006, Nagis, or 2008, Nagis cyclone, when it happened, international NGOs wants to donate aids and money to the people, the victims, directly. However, the regime asks them to donate to them, to international community to them, not directly to the people. So, you know, there are a lot of restriction like that, and there is no freedom to operate like that. International regime open to tell the community, international community that you can come and operate freely, but in reality it is not the case. So that is the first question. ဒုတိယတစ်ခုကပြီးတော့ဘုန်းကြီးတွေကိုဖိနှိပ်နေတဲ့အခြေအနေတွေနဲ့ပြောပြအခုလက်ရှိပေါ့ဘုန်းကြီးတွေကိုဖိနှိပ်တယ်ဆိုတာကတော့ဦးဇင်းတို့ဒီရွေးကောက်ပွဲရနီးလာတယ်ရွေးကောက်ပွဲနီးတဲ့အခါမှာအခုနိုဝင်ဘာ9ရက်ကိုရွေးကောက်ပွဲလုပ်မှာပေါ့ရွေးကောက်ပွဲနီးလာတဲ့အတွက်ကြောင့်ဘုန်းကြီးတွေကိုလည်းဖိနှိပ်တယ်လို့ဦးဇင်းတို့ဒီကျောင်းသားတွေပေါ့ကျောင်းနေဆိုလဲဦးဇင်းတို့အခုမြန်မာပြည်မှာဆိုတော့သတင်းကျိုးလို့ခေါ်တာပေါ့နော်ဒီလကနေပြီးတော့စပြီးတော့ကုံလုံးပြန်လွတ်တယ်ဘုန်းကြီးတွေဆိုလဲပဲဘုန်းကြီးအပါ400ရှိတဲ့ကျောင်းတွေကကိုယ်နယ်ကိုယ့်ဘာသာကိုပြန်ပြီးတော့ဟိုလူမစုမိအောင်သူကပြန်လုပ်တယ်ဒါဘာကြောင့်လဲဆိုတော့ internet ဆိုင်တွေပါလည်းပဲမသွားပြည့်အောင်ဘုန်းကြီးတွေလူကြားတဲ့များတဲ့မသွားပြည့်အောင်သူကဘာကြောင့်ပြန်လုပ်တယ်လဲဆိုတော့ဒီသူတို့ရွေးကောက်ပွဲမှာလူလူအုံကြွမှုကြီးပြန်ဖြစ်လာမှာကိုသူတို့စိုးရင်တဲ့အတွက်ကြောင့်တတ်နိုင်တဲ့နည်းနဲ့လက်နက်အားကိုနဲ့သူတို့ကဖိနှိပ်နေတာလက်နက်ပြပြီးတော့ဖိနှိပ်နေတာပါ And there are more pressures on the monks because it is near it is getting closer to the November 7th elections and they send those student monks who are studying at the monastery in Rangoon to their hometowns after the Sabbath month because they don't want the monks to be in the city and to see what is going on and they don't want monks to go and use internet and spread the news. So that is the situation on the monks. Second question was Myra,
it's a question about religions, right? And right? That people of different religions are working together.
Sorry, what's the second question again?
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if they can speak personally about like their own faith and the role it plays in resisting the military regime.
I mean, to me personally, I have to say that such situation is almost like beyond my comprehension. But why I'm doing what I'm doing is because it's almost like you already step into the situation and you can't step back. And I do have a hope that there will be a brighter future, but I don't know how long that'll take. So basically, I'm living on the day the moment I am in now, taking the courage and the energy from there and trying to move on and trying to achieve whatever that comes or I mean, whatever that I believe that I'm trying to fight for. I mean, it seems like my answer is so vague, but actually, it's almost like this is the best answer that I can give because it's so hard to say, yes, we're going to get to this destination next year. Because the thing is that we've been fighting for all these years. And since my grandparents, and then well, before my grandparents, I believe, and also my grandparents, and both my grandparents died already, and many of my uncles died, my aunts, and now here my age. And perhaps, I don't really know how many more years, but, so yes, my belief is still positive, but then also, I'm kind of like trying to work with the situation I'm in.
Christian level through Yongji Leme, Islam le Yongji Leme, no Jew le Yongji Nine. Ta Yongji Musula, Tiana Diagamatu, Ubama Soja Wazu, Lutia Seika leve, Seitajian le Madulu, Koye Lama Pashini de Koye Lago Tauji Leba, Koye Lama leve, Atu Achia, Manibao. I love Yongji Musula leve, Quebia Jama. Mimi Yonjira, Mimi Nita Yaurota, Gogo Jama, Editwa. Uzino Bowh gale Bama Mabiovu, Uzino Leve, Da Draga Bama, or Piatana Mishiba, Da Uzino ye Miemono, Aroko Yonjia Gololo me, Tabeme, Babe Bibi Beba Dama Be, Masuzu Bono, Ludari at what Conju Pure Banda Dido, Uzino Povido net that day, Povido le, Da Uzin Passanet like Mono, Povido let the Pojare have.
As Buddha said, what you believe is what you worship, and Buddha have no problem of other religions and differences, and people will be different. People have different beliefs. Christians will have their own belief. Jews and also other Muslims and so on. If you look at your fingers, they are not the same. They all are different. So it's okay to be different. And for my personally, I believe in a religion that are more beneficial to the people. That is my own belief.
ဒါကြောင့်အားလုံးလူသားတွေမှာလူသားအားလုံးဟာအမြဲတမ်းစိတ်ထားတစ်ခုတည်းမတူပါဘူးအားလုံးကကွဲပြားနေမှာပါပဲလို့ဦးဇင်းပြောချင်ပါတယ်ပြီးတော့ဘာကြောင့်မျောလင့်ချက်ပမာပြီးအတွက်လူသားအားလုံးကစိတ်ထားလူသားအားလုံးကစိတ်ထားချင်းတူညီကြမှာမဟုတ်တစ်စိတ်တည်းဖြစ်မှာမဟုတ်ပေါ့နော်အားလုံးကဒီလိုပဲကွဲပြားနေကြမှာပါပဲလို့ဒါကသဘာဝတရားထုံးစံအတိုင်းလူတိုင်းမှာဟိုသဘာဝသူ့အလျောက်ဖြစ်နေတဲ့အရာပေါ့နော်
It is natural that all the human has their own beliefs and this is what it is.
Did we answer your question?
Hi, I just want to give 2 comments actually. I'm Korean and as many of you might not know, Korea was actually not really democratic until 87 and things might get better and hopefully it will happen also in Burma because in 87 the government, which was actually mostly military personnel at the time, wanted to extend their presidency by changing the constitution on their own way, and in 87 and 86 there was a huge demonstration and all over the Seoul basically, and people basically made it possible and they changed it and the constitution basically limited the presidency to 5 years single time, and that's the time basically South Korea changed. I'm not talking about North Korea. South Korea changed basically to a more democratic country, as you might be able to see at this point. So I think that's some, hopefully your will be realized in the future. And another thing, I was just interested in about the comment Professor Scott, or like question Professor Scott asked about the Burmese soldier, that what were they thinking actually at that time. And in 1980s, in a city called Gwangju, which is southwestern part of Korea, actually there was a huge uprising for democracy, and basically the government crashed the whole thing, and some of my relatives actually passed away at the time. I'm not from that, my mom is from that area, so, and that information was blocked, and people didn't know actually, because the city was totally blocked. There was one journalist from Germany who happened to be there, and he was able to have all the data. He was able to get out of the country with the data to Japan, and that was how that actually event was broadcasted. So anyway, so there was this question 15, 20 years later. So what were they thinking, actually, the soldiers? Because we are the same Koreans, and most of the soldiers were not really military men. A lot of them were conscripted. They had to be in the military for 2 years, and they were just sent to the city, and basically it's still an ongoing discussion, and I think it's still, in Korea, it's kind of taboo. People don't want to talk about this, especially those who participated in it. And I don't think the government makes available who participated actually in that particular event. And at least from some snippets of it, it seems like they were just thinking, okay, these are my enemy. Like, they were all, as all of you know, they're not thinking like rationally, okay, these are also fellow Koreans who want democracy. They just follow the order, and it's not, I wouldn't say necessarily it's their fault, but anyway, the situation, circumstances made it like that, it seems like, and perhaps that can give us some idea how Burmese soldiers actually, at that time, when they attacked, or like when they were confronted with the protesters, what they were thinking basically. Maybe it was very difficult for them to even conceive at the time if there are people coming to them. So, and thank you.
That wasn't a question. It's worth, the question, I suppose, is democracy will eventually come to Burma in a real form, but the question is, what will be left? That is to say, not only have the life chances of 2 generations been devastated. But in addition to that, the country is being plundered for its natural resources, the teak, the minerals, the panning for gold along the Irrawaddy. There's a kind of destruction of the environment as the neighboring countries rush to take all the valuable commodities out of the country. And, of course, there are millions of Burmese who've left the country as well. There are probably more than 3 million Burmese, legally and illegally, in Thailand, more than 500,000 in Malaysia now. The numbers in India are substantial, a large number in China. So, in fact, Burma has, for the last half century, been hemorrhaging much of its talent and educated people and the people who would be the promise of a better Burma. Some of those people will go back if democracy returns, but one has to ask what will be left of the environment and what will be left of the human resources and so on after this long period of devastation. I didn't mean to have a soliloquy, please.
Well, the point you just raised, of course, makes things much more complicated, because my question or my comment is especially to the 2 activists. So in the beginning I heard a little bit you specifically saying that there might be some hope in opening the country a little bit. Now my question to the 2 activists is, do you think that by having more trade, although it's exploitation as well, but more trade, that you might have a more economic growth, maybe a little bit of middle class, maybe people who don't feel so afraid anymore of the military, and in that sense create a situation where people will be more willing to, on the one hand, demand their rights, and on the other hand have people who are soldiers who just don't obey orders as brutally as they do in the past. And maybe a final question to you, if I may. Does the government try to dissuade people from joining the Sangha by not becoming monks, for instance, so and thus reducing their power by having people not enter their group? Thank you.
Burma ပြည်မှာအဲ့လိုစီးပွားရေးဖွင့်ပြီးတော့မှဟိုတဖြည်းဖြည်းနဲ့ဆွဲယူမယ်တဖြည်းဖြည်းနဲ့ပြောင်းလဲလာအောင်လုပ်မယ်ဆိုတာကတော့ဦးဇင်းတို့နေခဲ့တဲ့အနှစ်20ကျော်28နှစ်လောက်ပြည်တွင်းမှာနေခဲ့တဲ့အတွေ့အကြုံနဲ့ပြောမယ်ဆိုရင်တော့ဒါအိမ်မက်တစ်ခုပဲလို့ဦးဇင်းကတော့ထင်တယ်ဟိုဘာဖြစ်လို့လဲဆိုတော့အခုလက်ချီနာအဖလုံနေတဲ့အားလုံးဟာစီးပွားရေးမှန်သမျှဟာနာအဖရဲ့မိသားစုဝင်တွေနာအဖနဲ့နှီးစပ်တဲ့လူတွေကြီးပဲလုပ်နေတယ်ဟိုဆိုကြပါစို့မြန်မာပြည်ထဲကိုတိုးတစ်ဂိုက်ဟိုတိုးတစ်နဲ့သွားတဲ့ခါမှာဟိုတယ်မှာတဲတယ်ဟိုတယ်ဝန်ထမ်းတွေပြည်သူဖြစ်ရှင်ဖြစ်မယ်စိုက်ကားသမားတွေပြည်သူဖြစ်ရှင်ဖြစ်မယ်အဲ့ဒီဟာရတဲ့အခွန်ငွေတွေဟိုတယ်အဲ့ဒီဟိုတယ်မှာတဲတဲ့ဟာတွေဒီနာအဖရဲ့ငွေဖြစ်တယ်အဲ့တော့နာအဖရဲ့ငွေဖြစ်တဲ့အတွက်ကြောင့်နာအဖသာလင်အကျိုးရှိသွားမယ်ပြည်သူအတွက်ကိုအကျိုးရှိမှာမဟုတ်ဘူးခုလည်းပဲဦးဇင်းတို့နိုင်ငံမှာရနေတဲ့ဂတ်တွေရှိတယ်နောက်ကြောက်တော်ဗရမများတွေရှိတယ်ကျွန်းသိတွေရှိတယ်ဒါတွေဟာပြည်သူတွေအတွက်နိုင်ငံတော်မှာရှိတဲ့ကျန်းမာရေးလူမှုရေးပညာရေးအတွက်ဘာမှမသုံးမဲနဲ့နာဖာသူ့ရဲ့ကိုဂျိုးရှာတယ်စစ်တပ်အတွက်ကိုနျူကလ িয়ার တွေဘာတွေလုပ်ဖို့အတွက်ကိုထပ်ပြီးတော့တိုးချဲ့အဲ့ဒါကြောင့်စီးပွားရေးသမားတွေထပ်ပြီးတော့ပူးပေါင်းရင်လည်းပဲနာဖာရဲ့အပေါင်းပါတွေပဲချမ်းသာသွားမယ်ဦးဇင်းတို့ပြည်သူတွေကတော့ဆင်းရဲတဲ့ပို့ပြီးတော့ဆင်းရဲလာမှာပဲရှိပါတယ်လို့ဦးဇင်းပြောချင်တယ်
By getting more tradings and getting more investments in Burma and to try to change it slowly, I think it is just a dream. Because for my personal experience, I have lived there for 28 years, and what I have seen is the people of Burma are not benefiting anything from that, from the government. All these resources are used to build the military only, not for the people. And if you go there as a tourist, you will spend money, and all the money will go to the regime, because the tax and everything has to pay to the government. So the people were getting more and more, poor, and the military regime and their cronies will be, getting stronger and stronger. There is no restriction to become monks from the regime. However, they put restriction on the junior monks, where they couldn't go freely. They cannot go to internet cafes, and you cannot go there. You cannot go there. So these kind of restrictions are on the younger monks. And for the monks in Burma, we are not allowed to cast any votes as a political reasons, not for religious reasons, because we are not allowed to support any particular members or any parties for our own benefits. So that is why we're not allowed to vote.
We have time for one or two brief questions.
Hi. I have a question that I'd like to please direct to Gawsita. I'm curious if you could please comment on how historically minded the participants in the Saffron Revolution are. And by that I mean, to what extent do they sort of consciously conceive of their activism as a continuation of the clerical resistance to the British colonial regime? To what extent do they take inspiration from that legacy? And if not, how do you explain their disconnection from it? Do you see that as a symptom of the breakdown of the Burmese education system? Or I wish you could comment on the historical connections. Please, thanks.
No, I don't understand. Whether these people think back to Sayasan and Utama and so on, and see their resistance in the as a long historical
the continuation of that.
Now that she do the Piama Pikima, Luda, Alon, a Jobu Melongani, Lobidoma, Piadi, Piapigo, Yala. I did all Boda ye, O Tarori, Yahani Galebe, the Boda ye Lanzon Limeso, Luda, Alon, Gonzabu, Atwago, Loa Maga, the Boda ye Lanzemalu, Arajo, through Lotago Leve, the Boda ye Lanzen, I load the low, ဦးဇင်းတို့လည်းပဲအခုကသူတို့လမ်းကျင်လို့လည်းပဲပြောလို့ရတယ်ဗုဒ္ဓရဲ့လမ်းကျင်နဲ့ဦးဇင်းတို့ဒီတန်ဃာတွေကလောက်တာပါ
Yeah, it is true that in a history context, those activists, monk and people like Siasen and Utama revolve, again under the colonial rule. As we are, as Buddhists, we are following the Buddha way, Buddha path, because Buddha enlightened after he did good things to the humanity, and so as followers we have to follow his path by doing good to the people, and you can say that we are following a Buddha path, or get inspired by the people like Siasen and Utama who did revolve under the colonial rule.
One more question.
Right. My question is, what is the ethnic makeup of the Democratic Party in Burma? And also, going back to what Professor Scott was saying, eventually the democracy will come, but I feel like for a lot of ethnic people, especially like, I can speak for the Kachin group, I feel like their main concern is to be its own state, So after the democracy eventually come, what's in it for them, Will they become their own country, or would Burma become like I guess a better democratic country where, all the ethnic groups can live together peacefully?
I think we would rather say federalism system, because right now, we don't talk about having your own country. We're just talking about your autonomy. But even that, it's not possible. Your people from Kachin state had to flee for lives. Women were raped, and the homes were taken away, the lands are confiscated. And it happened for the whole country. So if everyone wants their own state, so it'll be at least their own country, then Burma will become 8 countries at least. So that is not really possible. So I think our best bet is federalism system, where it's almost taking for quite a simple example like the US, where we have 50 states, but also different state leaders, government structure come together to DC to form the main government. I guess that is our best bet.
Gawsita or Charles?
And in the coming elections, there will be about 40 political parties contesting. And out of those 40 political parties, only 6 parties are for the all the constituencies, and other 30, almost, yes, about 30 parties are ethnic parties. They are contesting on their own region, only on their own region. This is the breakdown of the parties. Party, you don't?
ဒီတိုင်းရင်းသားတွေကခွဲထွက်မယ်ဆိုတဲ့ဟာကိုပြောတာလားအဲ့လိုမျိုးခွဲထွက်ပုံမယ်ဆိုရင်ဒီကဘယ်လိုဒီမိုကရေစီရနိုင်အောင်မလဲဦးဇင်းတို့တီးတလောက်ကတော့တိုင်းရင်းသားတွေထဲမှာအဲ့ဒီလိုခွဲထွက်ဖို့ပြောတဲ့တိုင်းရင်းသားတွေမှာတော့ဦးဇင်းတို့ကတော့တိတ်မတွေ့ဘူးပေါ့နော်ဒါပေမဲ့အစွန်းရောက်တဲ့ပုံကိုယ်တွေတော့လည်းချီကောင်းချီမှာပေါ့အားလုံးကပြောနေတာတော့တိုင်းရင်းသားတွေရောဒီပြည်မရောအားလုံးပြောနေတာတော့ဖက်ဖရယ်ပြည်တော်စုပေါ့ဒီပြည်တော်စုကိုပြောနေတယ်အဲ့တော့အဲ့ဒီဖက်ဖရယ်ပြည်တော်စုကိုနာအဖမလုပ်ပေးလို့တာလင်ဦးဇင်းတို့ခက်ခဲနေတာပေါ့အကယ်၍ခွဲထွက်သွားမယ်ဆိုတဲ့ဟာကတော့ဦးဇင်းတို့ဒီပင်လုံစာချုပ်မှာလည်းရှိတဲ့အတွက်ကြောင့်ခွဲထွက်ဖို့ဆိုတော့တိုင်းရင်းသားတွေထဲမှာလည်းခေါင်းဆောင်ပိုင်းတွေကတော့မခွဲထွက်မယ်လို့တော့ဦးဇင်းတို့တခါမှတော့မကြားမိဘူးဒါပေမဲ့တိုင်းရင်းသားနေထဲမှာတော့ဆွမ်းရောက်တဲ့လူတွေထဲမှာတော့အဲ့လိုရှိကောင်းရှိလိမ့်မယ်လို့ဒါဦးဇင်းရဲ့အထင်ပေါ့နော်
Actually, the ethnic nationalism is on the and growing in Burma compared to immediately after the independence, I think. During the days of the kings, Burmese kings, the center and periphery relations, the relation between the federal central government and the periphery areas are more harmonious than nowadays. Because there are only two connections, two links between the central government and the ethnic areas during the days of the kings. The first thing is the military service. When Burmese kings want to attack Thailand, they order all the ethnic areas, send how many soldiers from your area. That is the thing. Another thing is taxation. Once a year, you have to say some amount of money or some amount of forest produce, agricultural produce to the central government. That's all. Other than those two things, they have the total autonomy in their own areas. After that military government came to power in 1962, there are more suppression. That's why ethno-nationalism in Burma is now getting higher and higher. So if they can solve the issues, you know, the genuine federation, it will be over, I think.
I'm afraid we have to bring this to a close. I want to thank Gawsita, Myra, and Uchozanta for coming, and for all of you for coming. And finally, I want to thank Oliver Byar for having organized this event. Thank you.